a sword exactly in this manner. Welcome to my manner. I swing my sword, so whenever I get bored, I can swing my sword, I can swing my sword.
I never thought I'd have cause to say this, but good job, AMC. Into the Badlands is something I caught my dad watching upon initial release way back when, and while I was intrigued by the 3 or so minutes of it that I saw, circumstances made it so I never caught the rest. I'm almost kinda glad it took me this long to get back to it, as I wonder if myself from even just a few years ago would be able to appreciate this show as much as I can now. This series, man, this is something special. Basic premise, go! As is becoming all too likely in reality, the human race has totally screwed itself over and things have regressed hard to the point that firearms are no longer a thing. Here, anything and everything is settled with swords, baby! Life's returned to a feudal society where different territories are run by barons with their own agendas. One such baron is Quinn, whose death squad, known as the Clippers, are your basic military police type deal. Our protagonist is Sonny, Quinn's #1 Clipper, and the show wastes no time getting us to its inciting incident, the discovery of a young boy with a mysterious past named MK. A recently begun power struggle between Quinn and another baron who happens to have MK in her crosshairs makes things increasingly difficult for all involved as Sonny begins to realize that with the love of his life announcing a baby on the way, maybe what he really wants is to get out of Dodge while the getting's good. As to be expected, this is a conflict with consequences for a wide range of characters. No one is just background here, be they Sonny's cool and collected paraplegic mentor, Quinn's wife who's desperate for a sense of control, Quinn's other wife who's tasked with taking over matters in his stead, his son Ryder who's really just a pathetic little snot, and also happens to be Stupping, the wife of his father that's not his mom. This is a big old mishmash is what I'm saying. Right off the bat, even if this show isn't entirely my thing, I've gotta give it that there's not really anything else I've seen that's just like it. It's got all these wrinkles of uniqueness, uniqua, and that extends from the setting to the characterization. Everyone's playing a type, yeah, but they're all playing it memorably and I think with just enough to separate them from a cliché. I think a big part of that is how genuinely lost all of these characters feel over what to do most of the time. Sonny, MK, Quinn, Lydia, Widow, Ryder, Jade, Tilda, everyone. The plot is a complex, character-driven chess game of logic and emotion by a dozen or so players, and everyone, no matter their position, is constantly put on the back foot. It's real compelling to watch unfold, and it allows each character an added layer of depth and relatability because there's not a single person on any side here with the illusion that they're invincible. For instance, with a bigger ego and less vulnerability, a character like Quinn would come off real two-dimensional and impossible for me to sympathize with. And yet, in fleeting moments before I remind myself what a slime douchebag he is, I do. The performance of actor Martin Sokas cannot be understated here either. This guy absolutely transforms in this part. You see him in interviews and it's almost kinda scary how much he changes to play Quinn. All of the characters have that same level of attention to detail, and there's something to keep you rooted in the goings-on of each one. MK is a bit obnoxious in that way kid characters often are, but he's never unlikable and manages to come off as clever and proactive most of the time. For his own good, you don't want the barren widow to get her clutches on him, even if she does bring him in proximity to her daughter Tilda, in what is admittedly a pretty cute relationship. Not gonna lie though, whenever MK and Tilda get close, I almost want to shout at him to be careful so he doesn't catch Skittles pox. Lydia is another character whose archetype of the jealous, snappy older woman trying to keep a hold of her entitlements is one I tend not to like. But in this show, I feel like I have a genuine into her emotions, and that she doesn't come off shallow or unreasonable makes me feel bad when the bad things happen to her. Then there's Ryder, who, okay, I'd be lying if I said I felt bad for Ryder, but it is kinda sad in an almost amusing way just how much of an incompetent, worthless putz he is and how much that rightfully frustrates him. Still though, Sonny is the main character here, and I appreciate that the show never feels like it loses track of him amongst all the other players. He is the de facto protagonist, and it would have been so easy to have this guy feel like a stoic badass all the way through, but the viewer is always allowed to witness his weakness and his humanity. All around, I'd describe the story of Into the Badlands Season 1 as a complete tragedy. I don't think there's a single main character who wins, with one very debatable exception, and yet simultaneously I never feel down to the point that I'm not enjoying myself. Part of that is how the story is able to flow so we never get stuck in one moment. The series is really smart with its time in that almost if not every scene involves a dynamic shift between characters. The fact that I'm so invested in everyone means there's always something new to focus on, like how one of the Barons is Darwin from X-Men First Class. Truly, I will never be rid of Marvel ever. Of course, another large part of my enjoyment is the action. This is some damn fine fight choreography. It's over the top in the best way possible, as can only be expected from a series where strippers who run chainsaws over their corsets is just a thing that happens. You know, for fun. What's really impressive for a series where the action is such a big part of the draw is how the fighting never overwhelms the story. I also appreciate how different each individual fight is allowed to feel from the others, thanks to things like different matchups and locations. Picking a favorite is beyond difficult. Even more noteworthy than the action, though, is the setting. The producers of the series, including Daniel Wu, who plays Sunny, make no bones about how they prioritized a setting that felt original, and they did a wonderful job capturing that. These guys have every right to be proud of the world building on display. The aforementioned producers seem to label the genre that the show and setting inhabit as science fiction, and while I don't think that's an accurate genre to place this show in at all, if I were to agree with them, then it's safe to say there's no other science fiction show like this one. It's got almost a high fantasy feel with the barons as warring monarchs, and little to nothing in the way of modern technology, but then there will be moments where contemporary cars show up, or where characters talk about things like the White House in the past tense, and it's almost a smack in the face to be reminded that this is still, you know, Earth. Finally, I have to commend the show's sense of genuine stakes. I'm always on my toes, and with a cast this big and a premise this lethal, I'm constantly worried that someone could really go. When I'm honestly terrified for the potential death of a character at least once an episode, you know I'm invested what good. I'm not sure I can call Into the Badlands one of my new favorite shows, but if I find that this level of quality continues as the show goes on, it just might be up there. I almost want to apologize for how short this video is inevitably gonna come out, but the fact is there's just next to nothing in this series that I can find it in me to complain about. Combine that with the fact that I really don't want to ruin any plot points for you, and all I can really do is give you the broadest of broad strokes and implore that you check this show out on your own time.